I'm Eric Kroc, Director of Product Marketing at Vistara, and the topic of today's webinar is Hybrid IT and the Hybrid Cloud, Empowering the Enterprise. Okay, so we're going to cover a number of topics today. First, we're going to talk about the public cloud and its benefits. Then we'll talk about the hybrid cloud, what it is. We'll talk about hybrid IT, which is a new approach for managing IT operations. We'll talk about briefly about how Vistara can help you with this. I'll demonstrate the Vistara software. Okay, so let's start by talking about the public cloud. Everyone's heard about the public cloud, but let's just review some of the potential benefits that a public cloud service offers. One is the opportunity to transform what used to be capital expenditures to operating expenditures. As you know, under U.S. tax law, you typically have to write off capital expenditures over a 5-year period, but operating expenditures can be written off as an expense in full each year. So there's a significant tax treatment benefit by doing this transformation of accounting. Also, from a functional standpoint, the public cloud gives you the ability to have effectively infinite scalability from the standpoint of the enterprise. Obviously, no public cloud service has truly infinite scalability. Even Amazon Web Services has a limited number of servers in the end. But if you've got such a popular piece of software or popular application that you manage to use up Amazon Web Services capacity, that's a good problem to have. So for real-world situations, the public cloud, by its ability to have a large buffer of capacity that is shared across many clients and to provision ahead of demand with its visibility into the growth of demand over time, the public cloud can offer seemingly infinite scalability to any given enterprise customer. This also means that the enterprise can have greater agility in developing and deploying new applications and services. You no longer need to order, take delivery of, set up, configure, and test out new infrastructure. You can simply take advantage of the physical infrastructure that's already been provisioned in advance by the public cloud and start using it immediately. So you can also get potentially higher uptime. Any given enterprise will have some limit on the number of sites it's going to have for serving its applications, and a public cloud service offers enterprises, particularly smaller ones with who can afford a smaller number of data centers, the opportunity to distribute their serving capacity over more geographical areas and more data centers so they can reduce the risk of an outage, and also have the opportunity to recover from an outage more quickly if it does occur. Okay, now what are the factors that typically slow down public cloud adoption? It's still a new operating model, and as with anything new, people have questions. So frequently people wonder, is the public cloud going to meet my enterprise's requirements for security, my enterprise's requirements for compliance, my enterprise's requirements for availability? So if you're storing credit card information, you have to be PCI compliant. If you're storing healthcare information, you might have to have a HIPAA compliant infrastructure. And each enterprise will have its own internal policies and SLA requirements based on its application. Then the other question is, can a public cloud solution successfully integrate with my own existing management solutions? Not all management solutions are cloud ready. So you'll need to make sure that the management solution you're using is able to integrate with the public cloud solution or solutions you choose to adopt. Now, the public cloud doesn't do everything. It's important to keep in mind that for all the wonderful benefits of adopting a public cloud, there are a lot of problems that public cloud services today just don't solve for you. For example, public clouds typically will handle everything up to the OS layer, but all the physical layer, the storage, the compute layer, the networking, connecting that to the internet and all the rest. But from the OS layer upward, you're on your own. You have to create your own OS image. You have to determine what applications you're going to install, license the software, install that into the OS image. You have to do patch and configuration management for it on an ongoing basis. You need to make certain that you have appropriately licensed the software you're using for a cloud-based deployment. You'll need to monitor and manage the servers and the applications. You'll need to keep an inventory of how much infrastructure you're using and manage it over its life cycle. And finally, you'll need the ability to monitor and manage all of this. Keep in mind that most personnel cost is related to the OS layer and above. So the public cloud, for as great it is, it's not a panacea. You'll still have to solve the rest of these problems. Okay, now let's talk about the hybrid cloud. So the hybrid cloud computing is the coordinated use of cloud services across isolation and provider boundaries between internal and external cloud services. So in hybrid cloud computing, the enterprise combines its own private cloud and on-premise resources with a public cloud component to create a hybrid solution that should deliver the best of both worlds. But again, people have a lot of questions about the hybrid cloud as they dip their toe in the water here. People often are unclear about security or compliance issues, and there's a real need to integrate your solution across both the private cloud and the public cloud. So you'll need a hybrid cloud-ready monitoring and management solution to monitor the integrated solution. So what's a typical path to the cloud? Given the inevitable complexity of adopting a new operating model, enterprises typically start first with putting non-core support activities on the cloud. For example, enterprises, especially smaller ones, might adopt a cloud-based email service so they don't have to handle email on their own anymore. And then later move on to putting their own core business activities online. They may start with less confidential data and then move into more confidential data later as they become more comfortable with verifying that the cloud solution or solutions they've chosen satisfy their particular security requirements. Also, enterprises may choose to move services that have spiky and unpredictable load patterns onto the cloud first so that they can benefit from the cloud's ability to do dynamic scaling on very short notice. And then later, if at all, move services with smooth loads to the public cloud. Enterprises may also choose to keep services with smooth load patterns on the private cloud, because if you don't need the demand scaling characteristics that the public cloud can support, then enterprises can sometimes offer cloud-based services at lower costs from their own private cloud. Then in adopting cloud computing, enterprises will typically start with a static allocation of workload between the private cloud and the public cloud, and only later embark on dynamic allocation, where the enterprise dynamically shifts virtual machines back and forth between its private cloud and its public cloud based on demand. That's a very advanced operating model, and that remains a niche approach according to Gartner. Okay, so Gartner has outlined a typical virtualization roadmap that enterprises go through when they are adopting virtualization technologies in cloud computing. So they typically start with server virtualization. So that gives them the benefits of consolidating their workloads onto fewer physical machines, and that reduces their capital expense. Then they move on to distributed virtualization, in which you are distributing your workloads among multiple data centers. That gives you flexibility and speed and lower downtime through greater redundancy. After that, enterprises move on to the private cloud, which is adopting a set of cloud technologies for their internal infrastructure and data centers. That gives you the benefits of self-serve agility and adopting standard tools and technologies that are used throughout the industry for your internal cloud, as well as for anything you do on the public cloud. After that, enterprises then start shifting demand over to the public cloud in a hybrid cloud approach, where Some applications and workloads are moved on to the public cloud, some remain on the private cloud, and some bridge the two. This is obviously most compelling for unpredictable load requirements. And after that, enterprises may go to a complete public cloud model where they ultimately, long-term, largely eliminate their internal infrastructure and put everything on the public cloud. Okay, so now people always have a natural concern about being locked into any given vendor's solution, and this is true in adopting the public cloud as in anything else. So the OpenStack Foundation is now offering OpenStack as a potential solution for this problem. OpenStack offers a set of tools and APIs that allow you to easily move your workload from one cloud service provider to another. So this helps avoid cloud service lock-in and gives the enterprise a credible opportunity to switch their workload from one cloud service to another with minimal disruption if they find they can get a better deal elsewhere. So the emergence of OpenStack is a very positive thing because it will minimize switching costs and maintain good competition between cloud vendors to the benefit of their enterprise customers. Okay, so what are the management solution requirements that emerge from adopting a hybrid cloud operating model? So the first is that you've got to be able to manage both public and private cloud hosted elements. Whatever monitoring and management solution you choose has to be able to monitor and manage some elements that are in your own private cloud and others that are on one or more public cloud providers. You've also got to be able to map your physical infrastructure to your virtual infrastructure. You need to know which storage device a given virtual machine is depending on so that you've got that information readily accessible to you if you're troubleshooting at some point. Likewise, as you start to compose services from multiple elements, you've got to be able to map services to the elements that support them. You need a unified monitoring and management interface that pulls all this together so that IT can efficiently navigate all of this and monitor and manage and debug as needed. And finally, you need unified alert management. So as your physical and virtual infrastructure elements across the public and private cloud begin signaling issues or status updates to you, you've got a unified way to manage the flow of all that incoming information. So now let's talk about hybrid IT. What is hybrid IT? Hybrid IT is the result of combining internal and external services, usually from a combination of internal and public clouds, in support of various business outcomes. So it's a new approach to IT that leverages the private cloud and the public cloud and the ability to get services from both of them. Adopting a hybrid IT model changes IT's role. So once you adopt a hybrid IT model, IT organizations become a broker for services that are hosted partly internally and partly externally, and this makes IT an intermediary. So the vision is that with a hybrid IT model, in theory, you should be able to offer your customers the price, capacity, and speed of provisioning of the external cloud while maintaining the security and governance of the private cloud. Okay, so that's the vision, but how does this change IT's responsibilities? Well, IT now becomes a trusted evaluator and approver of services, but those services won't all be built and managed internally. In many cases, they may come from third-party providers who are offering them from other public clouds. IT still has to manage all the services it builds and offers using its own internal infrastructure, but IT has to govern services from all sources. That means that IT has to define SLAs that are not specific to its internal infrastructure, but that span both internal and external sources. And it's got to monitor and manage compliance with those SLAs. IT retains responsibility for identity management. It still needs to authenticate its internal employees and determine who should have access to monitor and manage infrastructure. And it still has to manage data security as data moves between the private cloud and the public cloud. So what are the solution requirements for a management solution that will address the hybrid IT model? Well, it's everything we covered previously in the hybrid cloud management solution requirements, plus in addition to that, a hybrid IT management solution needs to be able to monitor services. It's no longer enough to monitor individual elements. All your customers really care about is the service those elements are intended to offer actually up and running with the effective, sufficient responsiveness and availability. Also, you need to be able to offer a self-service service catalog that will compose a list of all the services that are available to your customers from your various internal and external providers so that they can go to one place and consume these services. Line of business users need to be able to request and provision new capacity on their own. IT stops becoming a gatekeeper in hybrid IT and transforms into an enabler and an empower of the line of business. But of course, in giving line of business professionals the freedom to provision new capacity as they see fit, you also have to provide transparency about costs so that they know how much money cost they're actually incurring for the enterprise. So all of these changes create some new pressures on IT organizations, some of which are fair and some of which are unfair. Sometimes executives and managers will look at a service cost quote they see from some public cloud provider and that is very low, and they will compare that to what they're paying for capacity from their internal IT organization, and they'll feel like their internal IT organization must be very inefficient. But these are by no means always apples-to-apples comparisons. A out-of-the-box, off-the-shelf public cloud solution may not offer the particular kinds of security or availability guarantees or compliance guarantees that an IT organization has built over time in its internal infrastructure. So in comparing costs between public cloud-based solutions and internal solutions, it's critical to make sure that you're actually doing an apples-to-apples comparison. But there is a healthy pressure that is created on all of us to make certain that our internal efficiencies are tracking industry best practices. So the emergence of the public cloud as a viable alternative to internal infrastructure is forcing all of us to make certain that our efficiency tracks best practices industry-wide. Okay, so this is really, again, driving cost transparency. Now that organizations have a credible choice between provisioning capacity internally and provisioning it externally, IT will be forced to justify its costs and ensure that its efficiency is optimal. Okay, so to make certain that executives are making fair comparisons, it's critical to embed clear, understandable cost and quality of service information in the IT service catalog so that executives can make rational, optimal choices based on optimal, accurate apples-to-apples comparisons of options. There are some additional metrics to keep in mind when you're considering cloud services, things that are possible with cloud-based services that weren't always possible using traditional internal solutions. One is you may be, in adopting a cloud-based service, you may be benefiting from greater agility. Since you no longer have to provision physical capacity yourself, this may give IT the ability to respond in real time to changes in demand and business needs. Also, you may have greater elasticity. A service may be able to scale upward much more than any internally provisioned solution would be able to. You may have benefits of continuity. By making effective use of a public cloud service, you may be able to achieve greater maximum time between interruptions by distributing your workloads across multiple geographic regions and multiple data centers. And you may also be able to achieve greater consistency and quality of service. So what can Vistara do to help IT organizations as they adopt a public cloud and hybrid IT? So the first is that Vistara is a unified IT operations management solution. It gives you a single solution that allows you to unify the entire enterprise. the physical infrastructure, the virtual infrastructure, and the public and private cloud alike. So you can use one solution to manage everything. Vistara will manage your physical devices in your internal infrastructure, your switches, your routers, your servers, your client devices, your mobile devices, everything, your network devices. And it will also manage your virtual infrastructure, your virtual machines, regardless of where they may reside, on your internal infrastructure, your legacy infrastructure and legacy servers, your private cloud where you've adopted cloud-based technologies for provisioning your infrastructure internally going forward, and across into the public cloud with support for multiple public cloud providers you can choose among. So Vistara gives you a modern IT operations platform. It spans your on-premise infrastructure, your private cloud infrastructure, and your public cloud infrastructure. So what are the capabilities that Vistara brings to the table? Well, first, it gives you secure, role-based, and auditable remote access. So you can manage your infrastructure regardless of where you or the consultants you retain reside. So it gives you a secure way to manage infrastructure internally, in private cloud data centers, and also in public cloud infrastructure. Then Vistara gives you the ability to do patch, configuration, and application management on your servers, regardless of where they reside. Vistara can do patch and configuration management for Linux and Windows servers, and it can also monitor and manage a wide variety of applications. Standard enterprise applications such as Exchange and Active Directory and SharePoint, common web applications such as Apache, and so on. So Vistara then also gives you the ability to process alerts that have been generated by your infrastructure, both physical and virtual, regardless of where that infrastructure resides, in the public cloud, in the private cloud, or in your legacy on-premise infrastructure. Vistara also gives you the ability to do runbook automation, so you can define standard operating procedures, and IT administrators can apply them as needed in response to the alerts they monitor. You can also automate this so that when the system detects a new alert of a given kind, a runbook automation procedure can be executed automatically. Vistara gives you the ability to define service level agreements and then also to monitor your compliance with them through a wide variety of metrics, both built-in ones and additional ones you can define. Vistara can also communicate status about your infrastructure to your end users by a variety of means. Then Vistara has a wide variety of built-in analytics and service reporting so that you automatically, simply by adopting Vistara as your management solution, get a wide variety of standard reports built for you, including an executive summary report that gives you a monthly summary of the performance of all of your infrastructure, cleanly formatted for you as a presentation. So with Vistara, IT professionals can spend less time editing presentations to describe the performance of their infrastructure and more time developing and deploying new services. Vistara also gives you a unified portal for monitoring and managing all of your infrastructure. It's critical to realize that Vistara is a solution not just for monitoring, but also for management. And this works both in hosted and externally managed environments. Okay, so Vistara gives you a unified IT operations management platform. It's available as a software as a service solution. It's highly secure, and it's a self-service IT model. Okay, so what are some of the considerations we need to keep in mind as we monitor and manage the performance of a hybrid service? Well, one is to keep in mind that you don't just want to be managing the availability and the performance of individual elements. You also want to be managing the availability and performance of an entire service. And availability may not be a binary metric. It may not just be, is the service up or down, or you may also want to monitor the service performance. And then you also want to be able to differentiate between planned downtime versus unplanned downtime. To make all of this possible, you need to be able to map services to the elements that support them so that when problems occur, IT can efficiently troubleshoot them. then you need to be able to provision this list of services and offer that list of services to your internal and external customers in a unified service catalog. The service catalog should only show the services to a given user that user is authorized to see. So obviously there'll be a different level of permission for an internal IT administrator versus an external customer. And that service catalog needs to provide guidance about cost to drive rational choices, both by IT and by line of business executives. Okay, so we talked a lot about what Vistara can do. We'd like to quickly shift to a demo. Okay, so now you're looking at the login dashboard of the Vistara solution. So the dashboard gives the IT professional instant visibility into their entire infrastructure at a glance. So you can see that the inventory tab here is grouping all the infrastructure elements that we are managing by the kind of infrastructure they are, whether it's a desktop or a server, a network device, a storage device, whether it's a converged infrastructure solution such as FlexPod or a vSpecs. Then it's also providing access to your virtual machines, your mobile devices, your compute solutions, and other infrastructure of different categories. You can also break down the inventory service by service, and it gives you visibility into your incoming request tickets, grouping them by priority. Okay, so now let's go over to the alert list. We talked about the need for unified alert management, and here is the Vistara alert browser. This receives alerts coming in from many different sources and presents them all together in a unified interface that IT administrators can browse and manage. One of the nice features of the alert browser is that it's possible for IT administrators to grab multiple related alerts that they realize are all being caused by the same underlying issue, and then bundle them into a single group, which will be managed as a unit. So when you get an alert storm with some underlying problem, like the loss of a storage device, triggering alerts coming in from many different elements that depend on that storage device, you can separate the wheat from the chaff and focus in on the number of real problems you're actually experiencing. The alert browser also has a powerful set of filters built in that allow you to query this database of alerts and focus in on the alerts that are concerned right at the moment. So you can look at which application you want to focus on, what type of alert, what host name, what type and subtype of alert, the particular type of status message, the start date and stop date, and so on. So this alert browser gives the IT administrator a powerful way to get on top of the bewildering array of alerts that can be generated by a distributed infrastructure that spans the public cloud, the private cloud, legacy on-premise infrastructure elements, physical infrastructure, virtual infrastructure. All of these different elements usually come with their own individual management interface, but what IT really needs is a global dashboard that pulls it all together, and Vistara gives you that, which is really helpful in adopting a hybrid IT operating model, since it puts you in charge of all the infrastructure regardless of where you're sourcing it from. So this is the alert browser that manages all the alerts. There's also a service desk built into Vistara so that IT can get visibility into all of the service requests they're getting from different sources and prioritize them and then manage them in priority order. So again, Vistara also gives you a unified service desk spanning the private cloud and the public cloud. I mentioned the built-in reports that are provided by Vistara. Vistara has about 100 reports that it offers out of the box, and those save a lot of time for IT because IT, unfortunately, in order to communicate the status of services to executive decision makers, often has to spend valuable professional time bundling up the information from many different sources and then putting it into a quickly understandable presentation. Well, Vistara automates the first step in that process by giving you a meeting-ready presentation deck that's formatted and ready to go. You can then export that and edit it further in the presentation software of your choice. You can also export the underlying data as a comma-separated file so that you can process it further in external analytics applications if you want to. All right, so now let's go to the infrastructure tab. This is really the heart of Vistara because it presents all of the infrastructure you have from all of the services in a very compact format. It starts by organizing the infrastructure in different ways so it can be easily browsed. The first is organizing infrastructure by type. You can see that the Type tab here organizes infrastructure by desktop, servers, network devices, storage solutions, converged infrastructure solutions like FlexBot and vSpecs, your virtual machines, mobile devices, compute solution devices, and then of course your public cloud solutions. So this gives IT an easy way to drill down on a particular device based on its type. But there are other ways that it's convenient to organize your infrastructure for convenient browsing and navigation. Another one is by group. So you may want to group infrastructure by the business unit that is dependent on it. And so you can have all of the infrastructure that is used by e-commerce services, all of the infrastructure that's used by human resources, all of it that's used by business services, training, web services, and so on. And that allows you to drill down on the infrastructure that's of interest for a particular business unit or its applications. You may also want to browse your infrastructure by the site that the infrastructure is resident at. So if you have multiple data centers, it's obviously important to be able to visualize all the infrastructure that is resident at a given data center and monitor and manage that as a unit. So Vistara gives you all of this. And in our upcoming 3.0 release, we will give you the ability to browse infrastructure by the service that it supports as well, addressing the need to compose services from multiple elements and monitor and manage them from a service perspective as well. So now let's go back to our infrastructure by type, and let's drill down a little bit into the capabilities here. So let's look at some of our servers. So here are our Windows servers, and let's drill down onto this one right here. So this gives you the monitoring and management interface for a Windows server. You can see there's a long list of tabs here that allow you to drill down on different statistics of interest, including the number of users, and so on. You can go on the device details page and look at more details at the particular device we're looking at. There are graphs that allow you to monitor the device's performance over time. And then you can also go to the Patches tab, and you can look at what patches have or have not been applied to a given server. So this is really important for addressing the patch and configuration management needs that we discussed earlier. The public cloud will give you fantastic access to physical infrastructure, but the OS layer and above is up to you. Vistara will automatically apply patch policies to each server based on the kind of server it is and audit that server to determine whether that server is compliant. Indeed, you can see this particular server right now is missing 46 patches, although it's got 7 installed. So this server needs to be updated. Vistara also has great flexibility in its patch policies. You can define different patch policies for different kinds of servers. For example, if a server is running a legacy application that is not compatible with the latest patch level, then you can define a new policy where that kind of server should be one patch level down. So Vistara can apply different patch policies to different services based on your needs. This works, of course, both for Windows servers as well as for Linux servers. You have the same kind of power over patches, the same monitoring and management power. So let's also now scroll down further and take a look at our vSpecs device here. So here is a vSpecs proven infrastructure solution. As you know, converged infrastructure solutions give you a recipe for building a private cloud. by specifying a set of element combinations that have been tested and certified in advance, they reduce the complexity of building your own private cloud solution. So here we have the dashboard for monitoring and managing your vSpec stack. You can see your storage pools, your most active volumes, the storage capacity that you currently have, active versus inactive virtual machines, the compute CPU utilization, memory utilization, and also storage utilization. So we give you a convenient dashboard to view the functionality of your converged infrastructure solution. We also give you the ability to look at the virtual machines that are running on a given converged infrastructure solution. And of course, we have this capability both for the private cloud and the public cloud. So this helps address the need for unified management of infrastructure across the private cloud and the public cloud in a hybrid IT model. Vistara also has the ability to map your physical infrastructure to your virtual infrastructure. So here you can see that this data store 3 is supporting this demo virtual machine, which is in turn controlled by this ESX host. So this helps the IT administrator to determine what virtual input that into the solution. So this means that IT administrators can spend far less time authenticating and context switching, and they can focus more on monitoring and managing their unified IT infrastructure. Our customers' IT administrators see tremendous productivity benefits simply through the fact that they aren't constantly context switching from one element management solution to another all day long in order to monitor the performance of their infrastructure and then manage it. Vistara gives you the ability to probably handle 80% of all your IT administration activities through a single application, Vistara, which means that IT administrators can spend less time context switching and more time getting the job done. Finally, as I mentioned, Vistara gives you the ability not only to manage your internal private cloud, but also the ability to manage public cloud solutions. Here you can see we've got visibility into Rackspace clouds, a IBM Smart Cloud. We of course have support for Amazon Web Services, and in fact Vistara can monitor and manage any OpenStack compliant cloud solution. Okay, so that is a quick walkthrough of the Vistara application. Okay, so I think we're going to finish up at this point. If you're interested in learning more about Vistara, please go to our website, vistarait.com. You can also send an email to sales@vistarait.com. We'd be happy to share more with you about the application or set up a private demo for you. Thank you for your interest in this webinar. We will be very shortly announcing a new set of webinars for the upcoming month, so stay tuned for that. And if you want to learn more about our solution, you can go to vistarait.com and look at the demos page where we've got demos as well as our previous webinars archived for your reference. Thanks very much, and we look forward to hearing from you.